Okay, so we'll kind of keep watching the chat as people come in. So I'm happy to kick this off more officially. So welcome to the Big Texas Author Talk. This has actually been going on since April 2020. I was just telling Joaquin and Natasha that this was a pandemic creation that just kind of kept going. We're very excited to be able to bring this to you. Gemini Inc. is the main organization that's hosting this tonight. If you don't happen to know who we are San Antonio's Writing Arts Center, and we've been around for 32 years. We began this adventure with Writing Workshops Dallas, and Blake Kimsey was a huge help. The NEA is supporting some of this, as well as Texas Commission on the Arts, and the San Antonio Area Foundation. We're grateful for that. So basically, I'm going to introduce our two authors. We ask that you stay muted during the conversation. There is an audience Q&A at the end. We really encourage you to leave questions in the chat. Valerie and I will be watching them, and you'll have an opportunity for about 10 minutes at the end of the show to ask Joaquin any questions you would like. And we do want to just shout out support for the local bookstores in our state that also help support this, like the Twig in San Antonio, Nowhere Books. And then of course the great presses that actually made Joaquin's book possible, Deep Vellum. So let me introduce our featured author, Joaquin. He has a really impressive bio. I'm just giving you a snapshot. He's a poet, spoken word artist, and award-winning teacher. Born and raised in the barrio of East Dallas, in his work, Joaquin strives to capture the duality of the Chicano culture. He's been called one of the most dynamic and passionate performance poets in the country, melding equal parts comedy, poetry, and dramatic monologue into a crowd-pleasing display of verbal fireworks. Always thrilling, Joaquin's hilariously manic presentation is full of compassion and nuance, never sacrificing substance for style. He's also a world champion. He was a National Poetry Slam finalist, a Grand Slam spoken word champion, an HBO deaf poet, performing at universities, conferences, and poetry slams all over North America and Europe. And we're really excited to be featuring his breakthrough erasure collection called Occupy Whiteness tonight in our Big Texas Author Talk. And then we're very delighted to be featuring our guest moderator, Natasha Cardozosa. She's a vessel of the word, poet, writer, speaker, and teaching artist. Her grounding work is deeply rooted in her BIPOC living experiences, mindfulness, and truths. Author of Mehi Africana, Heavy Light, and Crown. Her work has been published in Manteca, an anthology of Afro-Latino poets, Contra, Texas Poets Speak Out, The Acentos Review, Learn Then Burn Too, that's a great title, Defunct and Cutthroat magazines, R2, The Race Review, Wasache, and Afro-Latinas and Latinegras. We are very excited to have them both here tonight. We're really looking forward to this conversation. Kind of share comments and things that inspire you in the chat. And I'm going to happily hand over my virtual mic to our great moderator, Natasha.
Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, Gemini Inc. Virtual snaps. Throw it in the chat. Wow, I am very happy to be here. I was looking forward to this, and I hope I do well. Anytime I get to see you, Joaquin, I'm excited. So let me be the professional moderator that I am, ready to occupy whiteness. Before I begin, I want to read something from your book. De la misma manera, we more akin to dark than light. Joaquín Zihuatanejo. Are you ready to share the word?
Yes, I'm ready. Ready
Would
when you are.
We're here for you.
Okay, before I read, I just want to say, Natty, I started to drive the 38 minutes to your house because I thought, wouldn't it be cool to be the first ever Gemini Inc. book author night where the moderator and we had one computer. But then I thought, no, the sound might have been off, like we would have been too far from the computer. But I love that you're here, so thank you for being here with me.
Thank you.
I'm going to read the opening note for Occupy Whiteness, because these are hybrid erasures. And if you like, at the beginning of my MFA, when I came up with the ideal to write these, I asked my mentor, Professor Natalie Diaz. I told her, I said, I think I'm thinking of calling these hybrid erasures. What do you think of that name? And I remember Natalie saying to me, I don't know anyone on planet Earth who's writing them, so you invented it, so you call it what you're going to call it, and we all have to call it that.
Mhm.
So I love that. So these are hybrid erasures, but I didn't want to. I needed the reader to know the trick before they entered the book. I needed to reveal the trick before they entered, so they knew what they down, hybrid, and what my definition of it was. And then I was at a literary festival, and a very famous white poet had a conversation with me about the form and what I was writing. And it was like a 60-second conversation, and I just ran away after that conversation ended, and I started typing frantically into my phone every word they said and every word I said. People were coming up to me like, "Hey, Joaquin." I was like, "I'm so sorry. I'm not rude. I'm not a rude person, but like, I've got to type this because something just happened that's incredible. It's going to be the beginning of a book of mine. I can't get it wrong." So this is called A Conversation with a White Poet at a Prestigious Literary Festival. So let me get this straight, Joaquin. You take a book by a white male author and you read it until a page jumps out at you for whatever reason. You then erase every page before it and every page after it. Then you select somewhere between 3 and 14 random words on that single page and erase all the other words, leaving those isolated words floating in a sea of white space. You then occupy that white space with what you're calling brown verse. Is my understanding correct? Yes, it is. But don't you feel bad about taking words, even if it's just 3 isolated words on a page from a white male author? No. But why not? Because you see, I'm not taking any words. I'm discovering them. I'm colonizing them. So that conversation had to be the opening to this book. So this is a hybrid erasure from the book. This is called View from the 5th Floor of the Adams Hats Building, 1986. Mio, you see that dark facade? Magnolia Hotel, odd mythic creature, gentrified Pegasus, hips of flesh or semblance of flesh tore, so of brick and glass, obsidian, clad shoulders, dominating, diminishing, a reflection far bigger than mannequin, opposite, glass, stone, steel, what they call progress, we call theft. They will come, mijo, blue suits, yellow dragons. They will come and take all of this from us. So, so that's Occupy Whiteness.
Uh-oh.
That's what I wanted to do with this book.
You got my heart beating fast.
you got mine beating fast too.
Um, can I ask for a favor? There is a poem in this book.
Yeah.
I read several times, and it's called The Crossing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you read that for us? And then
Absolutely.
I can ask you some questions because that's where I want to start.
Absolutely. The crossing. He feels it first in the arms, legs, lower back, sweat dried on skin, unforgiving cactus spines, ankles and feet, bloody, 2 gallons of water, 3 cans of beans, a sleeve of saltine crackers, 118 degrees. In 2 days, he will drink his own urine. 80 miles to go, alone, except for the vultures circling overhead.
Who is he? Lauren, like that.
When I was when I was writing these, the poems that first made the first version of Occupy Whiteness, it was simply the hybrid erasures. It wasn't the micro essays or the translations or the photographs. It was just the hybrid erasures. I was doing a lot of work in border states. I was working a lot in New Mexico. I was working a lot in Texas. I was working a lot in California, and I was working a lot in Arizona. And when I was in Arizona, on the southern part of Arizona, I was going out of my way wherever I went, especially in the border region of the United States of America and Mexico. I was going out of my way to buy newspapers, to read these small town, small city little newspapers, to find out what was going on in the lives of the people where I was at, where I was working with young writers. And this was an article about a man's crossing of a desert, and it was about a particular group, but it sort of, there was this central figure that they were writing about, that they had a kind of a Q&A with in this article about this man's journey and his crossing through the desert, through the mountains, from Mexico into the United States. And that crossing was brutal, just insanely brutal. And it was filled with sacrifice, and it was filled with struggle, and it was filled with strife, which I think are things that can actually be beautiful. Like struggle can be beautiful and strife can be beautiful. And then that crossing got me thinking about like the act of crossing one's body, making the sign of the cross on our bodice. And I just noticed, like, I remember reading this article and thinking to myself, like, there's something sacred here. Like there's something sacred going on in every step that this person took in the direction that they were walking in this journey. Like there's something, and I'm very careful with words. Like, that so I learned that from you, to be careful with words. And I think there was something sacred and divine in these steps that this person was taking, which, so I wanted to paint this brutal, honest depiction of this person's journey. And at the same time, underneath it, see if I could get people to realize in the silence of the poem, in the white of the poem, which maybe is the desert that's surrounding the footsteps, that there's something sacred in that ache, and something sacred in that heat, and something sacred in that sacrifice. I remember that it took me, when I knew I wanted to write about this person's journey, and it took, I remember it took me a while to find the work that was going to be the erasure portion that led to this poem. I remember this poem was one of the trickier ones. I think I read something like 14 novels before I found the page that I knew was going to become the poem for this. And I didn't, like, I'll be honest with you, I did a lot during this process. I didn't read the entire novel. If it didn't come to me in like the first 80 pages, I felt like I wasn't going to find it in that novel. So I would just discard that novel. And I mean, literally discard. Like part of the process of creating the hybrid erasure was destruction, because I have to tear the page out that I'm going to work with. I have to white over words with my whiteout markers. I have to sort of like count lines down and count spaces over to transfer it onto my document to make sure that my words are falling exactly where they fell in that digest size novel. But I remember that was a hard one to get to, because that was one of the important poems in the book for me. And I wanted to make sure that the source that was going to become the erasure had to be just right for that one. I needed the right words to jump out at me, and it took me so long to find them for that poem. I just remember that was one that had a lot of work in it.
When you were describing this man, I felt like, just in my opinion, I felt like he was you.
Yeah.
As you were, writing, creating Occupy Whiteness. And one of the, I've read the book cover to cover, and one of the questions or things that I wrote down was walk in the wilderness. Was this couldn't have been just, hybrid erasures or
Yeah.
playing with form or telling these stories. What did your soul experience
Yeah.
writing this?
I remember there were times in my journey when I would be in southern part of New Mexico or the southern part of Arizona, and having to make like a trek from the airport to wherever I was working. And there are parts of that freeway that run along the southern part of the United States and just adjacent to the border with Mexico that are, for lack of a better word, desolate. I mean, like there's nothing there. Like you lose phone signal, you lose even like radio stations dissipate. Mexican stations start blending into your radio more than American stations do. Um, and I remember there were times where I would like pull off to the side of the freeway and just like walk out into the rocks, and over the edge. Uh, and I would take like pages that I had ripped out that I was working with, or I would take notes and ideals that I had with me, and I would sit in this like in unbearable heat, um, um, and just like feel the visceral heat. Like I could feel it on my fingertips. And like when I would sit, I would touch a rock and that rock would be like hot to the touch, you know? Um, there were times when I went to the border, like when I went to the wall and I just kind of like sat there, with my back to it, or I sat there looking through it, and I would take these pages with me. Um, and I would take my notes with me. And I got harassed so many times by Border Patrol because apparently we're not supposed to be that close to the wall. They kept telling me. Um, but it was there was something about like the process of creating these poems that it had to involve like going to the sand and going to the rocks and going to the heat and taking my work with me there, and writing these poems, which is why I think this is like, I tell people all the time, like Arsonist may be the most beautiful thing I've ever written in my life, but Occupy Whiteness is the most important,
That was going to be one of
because
my
like,
questions.
because it's the process was very physical for this book, like being in the sand and being in the heat and being among the rocks and like climbing the cliffs and like walking, a half hour out into it. And Natty, like there was a moment when I pulled over and I walked up this rocky hill, and I walked for like half an hour just out into the desert, and the silence, like the overwhelming silence of that space, like it was almost like painful. It was almost like ringing because of the nothingness of it, the vastness of it. And I'm looking down at my notes and these erasures that are the beginnings of these poems, and I just remember feeling overwhelmed, and because the journeys that I'm describing in some of these poems, I was in that silence for like an hour, you know, and some of these people were in that silence for days and weeks, months, and it's just it's large and it's big, and that and it had to be in these poems, the
And
largest of that silence.
and some of them stayed there.
Yeah, yeah, without question.
Yeah, you mentioned sand a little while ago.
Yeah,
The book has 4 different parts. Yes.
yeah,
The Occupy Whiteness of Flesh and Sand.
yeah,
Low key haiku,
yeah.
and then Juanita Speaks.
Yeah.
How did you come up with those titles?
Yeah, it was originally, I thought to myself, like people told me, like, when I broke Arsonist into 3 sections, people tell me like, God, don't break your book of poetry into 3 or 4 sections. Like everyone does that. But Arsonist had to be those 3 sections that it had to be. And then when I got to the point of creating Occupy Whiteness, I thought I'm going to go out of my way to just make it this one flowing thing, this free form thing. And I remember that I would have the book when I was the Dallas Poet Laureate for 2 years of my life, and I had this beautiful office in downtown Dallas on the 3rd floor of the Central Library, and I had this huge blank wall in my office, and I had tacked the book up, and I'm just moving things and I'm playing with it. And I kept seeing these moments of breath, these moments of separation where I was like, I know these are working together in their own way. And I know that these are working together in their own way. So it had to be broken into the sections that it did. In fact, originally it was just 3 sections. The Juanita Speaks section came after the fact, when I was near the end of the process of putting the book together and finalizing the book. And I was having these dreams. So I decided to keep a journal by my bed at night, and I was writing these dreams down of this woman who was speaking to me in my dreams, this woman named Juanita, and so I knew I had to do something for that voice, that dream voice that I was hearing.
Can you read something from that section of the book, Juanita Speaks?
Oh gosh, yeah.
If you can't find anything, I got a few.
I'm gonna read. I'm gonna read the long one. I love the long one. So this is este acto de tomar, this act of taking, una secuencia, a sequence, para mi abuela, for my grandmother. Ella dijo que solo un hombre podía concebir una trinidad formada por un padre, un hijo, el fantasma del hijo asesinado. She said only a man could conceive a trinity formed of a father, a son, and the ghost of the slain son. Una de esas trinidades es imposible. She said one such trinity is impossible. Ella dijo que si miras de cerca la estatua de la Virgen Madre en el altar, verás dónde se ha estillado el vestido azul en algunos lugares, causado sin duda por las manos de hombres irreflexivos, revelando el yeso blanco debajo. Solo la Virgen Madre tiene un alma sin mancha. No puede haber padre, ni hijo, ni fantasma sin una madre que él es de toda la vida. She said if you look at the statue of the Virgin Mother closely on the altar, you will see where the blue of her gown is chipped away in some places, caused no doubt by the hands of thoughtless men, revealing that white plaster beneath. Only the Virgin Mother has a soul without blemish. There can be no father, no son, no ghost without a mother to give them all life. Ella dijo que vendrán y nos quitarán todo eso. She said they will come and take all of this from us. Ella dijo que es una cosa tan masculina este acto de tomar. She said it is such a masculine thing, this act of taking. Ella dijo que solo había una palabra en inglés para amor, pero hay muchas para robar. She said there was only one word in English for love, but there are many for theft. Ella dijo que está bien llorar, simplemente no delante de ellos, nunca delante de ellos. She said it's okay to cry, just not in front of them, never in front of them. Ella dijo que se jodan. She said, fuck them. Ella dijo que no es pecado maldecir. She said it's not a sin to curse. Ella dijo que solo puedes odiar y amar en el idioma que te se da. She said you can only hate and love in the language you are given. So I was writing all these notes down from this young woman, this Juanita, who was speaking to me, most times in a cotton field, under a single tree. And I was writing these things down, and I knew that I wanted every part to begin with she, because this is her voice coming through these dreams that I'm going to put into my poems. So originally the poem was going to be 36 sections because I had 36 things that I needed her to say in this poem in the original draft. But in order for it to be a hybrid erasure in this book, I have to discover a word, to colonize a word on a page that can create the jumping point into the brown verse that's going to occupy the whiteness. So I needed a novel by a white male author that had the word she on 36 consecutive pages. And you want to know what word white male authors really don't like? She. I read dozens and dozens of novels by white men looking for one that had the word she on 36 pages in a row. that this was the poem that took the most research to find a book to pull from. Found one that had like the 14 pages of she, the 14 sequence parts that you hear in this version. And it wasn't 36, it was like 14 pages. And I thought, this is it. Like, it has to be this, because I can't keep searching and searching for the book to jump off, for the jumping off point. But I love letting people know that, yeah, white male authors do not like the word she.
Mm.
And it's like, and I'm writing a novel now, and so I'm writing this story, and I decided, like, early on, like, it's not going to be the boy and his abuelo, his Lolo. He calls his abuelo Lolo. It's going to be his abuela, his Lola. So he calls his abuela Lola, and she's the guiding light.
Mm.
She's his Samira, she's like, she's going to be the one that saves him. Even when she's not there, she's going to be the one that saves him.
The Juanita Speaks. Did she keep coming to you in your dreams?
Oh yeah, I was bewitched is the wrong word. It's more positive than that. I was blessed by this vision that was coming to me in my dreams. And like, um, it was a young woman. It was like a young teenage Latina coming to me in my dreams. And like, um, there's no picture of my grandmother at age 17 that I've ever seen, but there's a picture of my abuelita Juanita and like my tia Lupe at like 60, both of them. And you can't tell who is who. They look like twin sisters. And then there's like a picture of my abuela in like her 30s and my tia Lupe in her 30s, and you can't tell who is who. They look like twin sisters. And I've seen a picture of my tia Lupe as a teenager, as a young person. And I know what my abuelita Juanita looks like at 17 because I've seen a picture of my tia Lupe. So I know exactly what my grandmother looks like at 17. So that's the figure that was coming to me in my dreams. And yeah, so maybe this figure wasn't my grandmother. Maybe this figure was Aida, my wife, and Ayana and Dakota, my daughters, and Natty, my sister, Fran, my friend. Maybe it was all women that have had an impact on my life coming to me. I don't know. Maybe it was my abuelita Juanita as a young person coming to me, but like they just kept coming. And so I kept waking up from this dream in this cotton field and writing down things that I had said to her and that she had said to me. And a lot of those things found their way into this long form thing at the end of the book.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
The book is also translated
Yeah.
in Spanish.
Yeah.
Speak to what that was like, and what was that like?
So when I submitted the book, my publisher is Deep Vellum Publishing. They're in Dallas, Texas, and they could be in Paris, they could be in New York, they could be in Chicago, they could be in London, because they're that good. Multiple like National Book Award, nominees now, and like they're a big deal. They're a very big deal, and they're in freaking Dallas. And God bless them. I love them. I love Will Evans, the owner, and it was his vision to do this. When I submitted the book to them, it was half the size that it is. It was just the hybrid erasures. And my editor, Sebastian Paramo, PhD. Man, brown people getting PhDs, y'all. I got to give me one of those PhDs. I only have a MFA. I need to give me a PhD, y'all. He said to me, Joaquin, like, I love your book, but what if you explore hybridity even more and place some things in it that have no business being in a collection of poetry? Because this is a very important collection, and I think it can be even more important if we explore hybridity in even more unusual ways. I think if you do this, Joaquin, like it might even be something that's, more akin to like what Claudia Rankine did in Citizen, where there's like art and micro essays and poetry defining the Black experience at that time for Claudia Rankine in America. And he was saying like this could be something that's like the definitive of the brown experience in your time in America. And so when he said that, I said, yeah, I'm in, absolutely. What did you have in mind? He said, well, I was thinking about micro essays and some micro essays that are just merely like several words, and then some micro essays that are more like 400 words or 300 words or 200 words. And when they said that, I told Seb, I said, I'm in, but I have some conditions. And they said, and he and Will Evans, the owner and operator, and my editor, they were like, what do you mean conditions? And I said, well, I want the poems, the hybrid erasures, to be on white paper with black text, but I want the micro essays to be on black paper with white text, and then I want one page in the book to be on gray paper with white text. And they said, done, we're in. And I said, that's not all. I said, I want the micro essays to be in my grandfather's language first, Spanish. And then I want them to be translated to my language, English, after the fact. Because if my grandfather picked up this book, I want him to be able to experience the micro essays and have full understanding of them before people who don't speak Spanish. That was important to me. And they said, done. We love that. And I said, that's not all. And I said, I want the micro essays to have no title above them and to have no mention in the table of contents, meaning, there are undocumented pieces in my book. They are just as important as the documented ones, trust me when I say this. And they said yes to all my demands. And so we decided to add these essays and micro essays in with translation. And then that's when I told them, hey, I've been doing a lot of this writing on the border as I'm traveling Southern California and Southern Arizona and Southern New Mexico. And I've been taking photos of the desert and of the mountains and of the border and of life there and of people there. And I think I ended up with like 100 photos, and they were all in black and white. Like I was instantly transforming these into black and white, like right after I took them, because I knew that there was going to be this sort of black-white duality in this light-dark duality in the book. And I knew that was too many photos for the book, even though I sort of loved all the ones that I cropped to the final 100. So I had to narrow it down from like 100 photos that I thought would be really great to be in this book, to be companion pieces to the prose and to the verse. And I think I had to narrow it down to 20. And so, yeah, so that was like putting the photos up that I had printed out like on the wall with those poems and like splicing them in between these two things and looking at them and seeing the kind of breath that it created or the silence that it amplified. That was another part of the process, and sort of aching over where the art was going to go. So yeah, so it's this multi-genre thing. And like I said, it was nominated for some prizes and it didn't win. And I kind of understand that it didn't win because I don't really know that it's actually just a collection of poems. It's sort of like it's sort of this other thing. And that's one of the things that I love about it, is that it's this beautiful other thing.
It is. Wow. You got me off track. I was like, what's my next question? On the life and death of Adam Toledo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gustavo, Jorge, Mateo, Jesus, Jose, Red, Jojo, Manny. None of them were bad boys. They were lost boys who sometimes did bad things. Please speak about those boys.
Yeah, the Gustavo and Jorge were brothers, and Jesus and Mateo were brothers, and Jojo was my cousin, and Red was a white boy in the Barrio.
I knew he was white. I knew he was white.
Red was a white boy in the Barrio East of the Lower East Side, and get this, Nettie, like his mom was dating a man from Oaxaca for years, and he only spoke Spanish, and so you got to picture Red was this red-headed, blue-eyed, freckle-faced kid who spoke better Spanish than all of us did, like because that's all that was spoken in his house was like Oaxacan Spanish, and so like we were these misfits. We were these kids who came from a very tough neighborhood. It used to be called Barrio East Side, and then it became very trendy, and now it's called Old East Dallas, and it's like the place to be. But we were poor kids from a tough neighborhood who looked out for each other. And when I say looked out for each other, I mean like looked out for each other, like cared for each other, like loved each other, like sangre, like blood, like family. And those boys, like when we grew and got older, like I was like always a couple of years younger than everybody. And like I was like 4 years younger than like Jorge and Gustavo. It was like 5 years older than me. So like there was this age gap between me and the other boys. And I was excelling in school. Like it was like my thing, writing and reading and school. And like, and then when they got to be like teenagers and 16 and 17 and 18, and I'm, in middle school, and they sent me to this tag academy, this talented and gifted academy, like they would just go do knucklehead shit at night, like go garage hopping in the suburbs and like steal stuff. And they'd never let me go. Never let me go. And I remember like challenging like Jesus and Mateo and Gustavo, they were the leaders, and they told me to my face, they were like, no, like you have this gift, man, like this thing with words in school. Like none of us have it. It's like a gift you have, and like we're not gonna let you mess it up. So no. And like they would like put hands on me when I would say I'm coming with, like put hands on me, like physically prevent me from going with them. And like to this day, like I think those boys saved me. Like they saved me, and I love them. And some of them are gone, like gone, you know?
Yeah.
Some of them are gone, still here, but gone because they're in Huntsville in the penitentiary. And, but they were lost, and they were beautiful,
Yeah.
and they protected me. And so writing about that piece is sort of broken into two sections. It's sort of like the story of this particular day of my life, of me running with a blood-covered gun as a mocoso, and this story of this boy's life that was cut short. But I loved writing about those lost boys. Yeah, I love writing about them.
Y'all better get the book. Y'all better get the book. Boys, children, you work with students a lot.
Yeah.
And I think it was earlier on in the book, you were talking about some students that lived on one side of the border and then went to school on
Yeah.
the other side. Can you talk
Yeah.
a little bit about that? And why did you put that in here?
Yeah, I was having a conversation with the director of a program in South Texas in the RGV in the Rio Grande Valley. And she was telling me about these, I was asking about these kids' lives that I was working with at this one particular high school. And she was saying they had a significant number of students, like significant number of students who live hours away from the border in Mexico. And they take a bus to another bus and then take that bus to the border. And because of new procedures, the crossing has been slowed down to almost a standstill. So what was once like a 13-minute thing for them crossing has turned into like a 1 hour thing crossing. So after riding for hours on a bus to the border and waiting for an hour to cross, they then have to cross and walk over to a city bus in Brownsville, Texas, and catch a city bus to the school, which only drops them off about like 10 blocks away, almost a mile and a half. And then they have to walk that last mile and a half. So their journey to school is like 4 hours. And they do this for the chance of going to school in Texas. And a lot of these kids were born here while their parents were working here. Even though they live in Mexico, they live hours south of Texas. They live in Mexico. It doesn't change the fact that they're American citizens. These are American citizens who are journeying, and they do this every day. And they have to make that same journey home, And some of them she was telling me that a lot of the kids confided to her that they study on the buses when they're going home, and it's just like loud, and some of the buses have animals on them, and it's just like how are you supposed to try and concentrate and study physics in that setting? But these kids do it. They do it, and this is their lives. And I close that piece with the word ganas. Like when you hear the word ganas, I want you to think of these kids who do this every day, and that's an important story. And not everyone knows about these kids in this country. And I want everyone in this country to know about these kids. Because if there's anyone who deserves to be a part of this country, it's someone who's willing to walk across a desert or walk across mountains for the smallest chance of freedom. or kids like that who will ride multiple buses and wait in line just for an education. So part of the book, Occupy Whiteness, was to amplify and amplify the beauty of brown people. You know, I love
So
brown people for the life of me, Natty. Like, I mean, I love a lot of things, but man, I love brown people. You know,
look at us. Look at us.
yeah.
I don't want to go down memory lane, but I
Come
got
on,
to.
come on.
The Black Dog Tavern.
Yeah.
There was an opera singer and a school teacher that was a couple, and they said, if you ever hear his work, you're gonna love him. And I've been loving your work
Mm.
ever since. We're gonna get to the Q&A, I
Yeah.
promise. But what are you working on now?
I'm working on a novel. I was telling someone before we started that it's been an interesting process for me because in a poem I have to tell the truth. Like people I've had arguments with people before about like, no, you can make stuff up in a poem. Like you can, you can.
Right.
But I'm a poet, and people pay me to write poems on paper. People pay me to go stand on the stage and read poems to people. So I'm a poet, and I have to tell the truth in a poem. If it's not written in lines, and it's not an awful truth written in a beautiful way, then it's not, to me, it's not a poem. Those are the only two things it has to be. It has to be written in lines, and it has to be uh, some kind of truth, your truth, someone's truth, the universe's truth. Um, so writing this novel is, making up beautiful lies, and it's been fun and it's been inventive. But I will say I'm really excited about just finishing up my project Immigrant, which is my next collection of poems. And Deep Vellum has already agreed to publish that book for me as well. I signed my contract a month ago. And what I love most about Immigrant is that it's this new book is it's going to be translated as well, but the poems are going to appear in Nahuatl first,
Oh,
and then Spanish, and then they will devolve into English third. And I'm really excited about that because, like, one of the things I want people to know about Immigrant is that, like Spanish is not our language. Like it's not. I mean, it's a hard thing to tell brown people, but like that is Spanish is as white as Italian, is as white as English in England. You know what I mean? Like Spanish is a white language, and we speak it because it was forced upon us. But we had a language for over 1,000 years before we had Spanish for 300. Like we had a language, and we speak our father's tongue. The Spanish conquistador, that's our father. We speak his tongue, but we also have our mother tongue. And that's the indigenous languages of Mexico and Guatemala and Central America. And I don't want those languages to die. And luckily, we have a translator in South Texas who teaches Nahuatl and is doing the translation work for that part of the book for me, for Deep Vellum. We have an incredible Spanish translator, Brian, who's going to he did the Spanish translations for Occupy Whiteness because my written Spanish is horrible. And he's doing the work again for us. I'm pretty sure that's who we got. And I came up with the idea of having like a pronunciation guide in the back of the book, Nahuatl pronunciation guide to help people with
wow.
diphthongs and with sounds. But there's a lot of my mother, since this is the mother tongue, there's a lot of my mother in these poems. I wrote a lot about my father in this book called Arsonist. Can I read you a poem from Immigrant, a short one?
Absolutely. I got your question first, Lauren.
So this is called Pink Noise. When I clench my fist, I close my eyes, try desperately to remember what it felt like to be the size of a comma, to breathe my mother's water, to drink her blood. My fingers unfurl like collapsing waves. I breathe deeply. I know I am 49% vampire on my father's side, 51% pink noise on my mother's. and pink noise is that, and it's there's like some science behind it that like that noise contains like the frequencies, like all the frequencies you could ever need to hear to create the feeling of relaxation
Mm.
emotionally and physically. And like like you hear that when you're in the womb, like you hear that noise for 9 months, and that noise of the ocean is the same as the noise in the womb, and it's like the perfect noise. And it's the noise of, it's the sound of woman, it's the sound of mother, and it's the perfect sound, it's the perfect sound. And so yeah, so um I talked a lot about men and arsonists, and I wanted to talk about women. And
Gemini Ink, can we have 2 more hours for this
no,
thing? Okay. Look,
we gotta do that Q&A.
yeah, I got it. I have this version. You got a
Yeah,
better version of this?
yeah, that's the one.
This is the one.
That's
Okay,
the
so if you don't have this, you got to get this. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Joaquin. Thank you, Gemini Inc. And our first question comes from Lauren. Lauren wants to know, do you write most of your poems in Spanish first?
um it happens like that sometimes. It does. When I was writing, I wrote a poem for the book Arsonist in Spanish first, and then I wrote the translation of it afterwards, the English translation. And then I had someone help me because I was pretty sure I had some grammatical things going wrong in the Spanish, and someone helped me out. And I was sort of proud that I only had like 3 errors in the Spanish poem that I wrote. Um, and then when I put it in the book, I had the English version first and the Spanish version second, sort of behind it. And one of my professors, this was during my MFA, one of my professors said to me, like, Joaquin, I saw you write that poem. Like, I saw
Mhm.
you with my own eyes write that poem, and it was in Spanish first. Like, if it should be in Spanish first in the book, and then in English after the fact, because you wrote it in Spanish. And I was like, damn it, you're right. And in fact, that's when I came up with the concept, because we get so much English, and then people who don't speak English have to struggle to do the work,
Yes.
the translation. So that's when I decided that I would have the poem in Spanish first. And originally I was going to just leave a blank page on the back where you were going to have to do the work of translating it yourself. But then I came up with the ideal of translating the poem into English, but as each line progressed down the page, it would fade
Mm.
in ink texture until like the last 4 lines are white. Like you literally, you see the poem blank out or white out as you roll down it in English, letting the reader know, like, I'll give you some of it, but the last 4 lines you're gonna have to find yourself, because
Ooh.
brown people have to do this every day, and I want you to have to do what they have to do. So
Mm. Snap for that. We have one of our very good gold friends, not old friends, gold friends
yes,
in the room. Cher Musico Roots.
yes,
Thank you for being here, Cher. Cher wrote something earlier in the chat. I'm going to read it and I want you to speak to it if you can.
please.
It's so interesting. I have a peer who is essentially accusing fellow performers of appropriating their own culture because they are mestizo, mestiza. But when they reference aspects of their own culture, it's confusing of the peers finger pointing. Cher says, your book is very timely for me to reawaken and reread. What do you think about the appropriating?
Yeah, it's tricky as hell. It's really tricky as hell. It's a tough time to be brown in America, I'll tell you that, because like 60 something percent of brown men voted for him. Like let's start there. Like that happened. Like that happened. It happened. And like brown people, we're hurting now. Like we're aching. And our people are being taken away from us. And our
Yes.
children are being separated from their parents. And 69% of brown men, 67, whatever it was, voted for this to happen by voting for him. You know?
Mm.
It's it's I love brown people. I love brown people for the life of me, Natty. But
I
that doesn't mean,
agree.
just because you love something doesn't mean it can't break your heart. You know what I mean?
Right.
I remember I was writing these poems, and I was in northern New Mexico, working at a junior college, and I had a kid come up to me and say he was offended that I wasn't speaking Castilian Spanish to him, that I wasn't pronouncing my C's and Z's the way that they should be pronounced. And we were having this conversation, and I used the word, I think I used the word Latino. And he's like, no, 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 no. I'm not Latino. I am Spanish, Spanish American. And he's got this, like, there's this whole faction, like, they call themselves norteño, like these people in northern New Mexico who have such like strong Spanish pride that they don't even. And by the way, this young man who was having this conversation with me looked like an Aztec king.
Okay.
He looked like Mexico. He looked, I mean, he looked like Oaxaca. He looked like Guerrero. He looked like Ixtapa. He looked like, I mean, almond eyes, dark brown skin, the shape. He looked like a sculpture, a Mayan sculpture, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm just, it's a campus. I'm trying to be polite. I'm trying to be kind. I don't want to tell this young man, you look like an Aztec prince. You know, you do not look like, you know,
yeah.
Cortazar. But here we are. And like, you've written about this. You've written that like sometimes we be divided because we
separate ourselves.
We divide
ourselves. We divide us. You know, I can go on about that.
That's a whole hour right there. Like, but I think what we can do to combat it is to create art.
That's it.
Create dialogue and to create connection. And even if that means ruffling some feathers, because like I know when this next book comes out and I tour with it and I tell people like that's not our language. Just like I'm gonna be pissed off so many brown people. But like they got Natty, someone's got to tell them the truth, you know, and that someone's gonna be me. It's gonna be me.
Ooh, yes, creating art and dialogue is crucial. Look, my eyes got big a little, like this big a little while ago because Osmani Ochoa. Hi, Joaquin. Now, you remember when we talked about like all these people that would give me gifts? Nobody has ever done this for me. Hi, Joaquin. I just wanted to share that I love the book. It resonated a lot with me, especially the intimacy and how poignant it is within the unapologetic condemnation of oppressive systems. So I decided to write a craft essay about your book for my MFA application.
Wonderful.
And I thankfully got into 3 schools. So you were part of my process.
Thank you.
I can also share my essay here. I'm going to read that.
Thank you so much. I look forward to reading that. I always say like the highest honor you can pay a poet is to analyze their work and write about their work, and hopefully maybe someday even teach their work. Like those are, I think the highest honors you can give a poet is to analyze their work, to write about their work, and to teach their work. So thank you.
I hope I'm pronouncing this right. We got a Juyeon?
Yes, you got it.
Yay! And somebody unmuted themselves. Did you see that? Juyeon, you know what? You can talk to Joaquin.
Okay, sorry, I have to turn off the video. So yeah, like thank you for sharing your powerful poetry and the stories of people living along the border. I was especially struck by the experiences of students you shared. I also teach college students as well as incarcerated students. But I'm not really familiar with, Texas or, Mexican American writers. I mostly teach African American literature. I lived in, Mississippi and Tennessee for a while. So yeah, like, could you, I want to know what happened to those students after they completed high school. Like, have they gone on to college in the US?
Yeah, I'll speak to talking to there was a group of 4 young men. One of the scholars' names was Isidro, and these were 16-year-old scholars that I was working with. And I remember having a conversation with them, and I said to them, "Have you ever?" And they were all like, "Nope." And I said, "Have you ever been to a gallery to look at art? And they were all like, nope. And I said, well, this is my most important question. Have either of you, not your schools, have either of you ever been to a public library? And they were all like, nope. And when I asked them why, I said, why have you not been to these places? They said, because those are white spaces. That's what they said to my face. Those are white spaces. And that got me realizing that there are places out there where brown people, especially young brown people, feel unsafe and feel uncomfortable. And what I want them to realize is that as daunting as it can feel, as challenging as it can feel, sometimes we have to go to those places and simply be, simply exist and occupy those spaces and make them ours. I found out from a colleague that one of those young men, the one I mentioned, Isidro, is now in his second year at university and is doing really, really well. So a lot of these young scholars that I wrote about, that I worked with, are at community college or at university or at a vocational or trade school. Some are in the workforce, but all of them, I think, are on the path to light and whatever that might be for them. And I always say, like, there's a lot of different paths that we can walk, and if you're walking in light, then you're walking the right path. And whether that means university or community college or vocational or trade school or the workforce, I'm so proud of some of these young scholars that I got to meet and got to connect with through the process of writing these poems and these stories. Natty, we're almost out of time.
No, I was like, I'm over here looking at you like I looked at you 20 years ago. I just love him so much. He's so brilliant.
Natty, can we close with me making a suggestion to you?
What?
I want to give you a suggestion.
What's the suggestion, sir?
Remember the movie Hocus Pocus? About three witches. It's got Sarah Jessica Parker.
Yes,
It's got Bette Midler. It's got Kathy Najimy. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Kathy Najimy has a daughter. Her name is Samia. I'm saying Samia because I'm Latino, but I think she pronounces it Samia. Samia. You need to find her Tiny Desk concert. She's got a Tiny Desk concert, and one of her songs is there, the title is, and it's repeated in the song, is there something more beautiful in the movies than me? And to me, like, I was like, damn, I know exactly who she's singing that to, like, and we're artists and we create art and we have children. And like, I'm listening to this beautiful song by this very young, talented singer. And I'm thinking to myself, like, have I ever made my girls feel like, you see what I'm saying? So I want you to see this Tiny Desk concert, especially that one song, is there somebody in the movies more beautiful than me? Samia. It's like your mom's name / sans the R. It's missing the Samia. So that, I'm a teacher. I give homework. So my homework assignment to you is to watch Samia's Tiny Desk concert. So there you go.
I'll do the homework. Thank you for doing the work that you do. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you, audience.
Thank you all so much. You could have been playing basketball with someone who has beautiful wrists, but you were here for poetry. So thank you.
Let me turn this thing back over to Gemini Inc. Y'all give Gemini Inc. some love, support them, share the social media. Alexandra, do we have any last minute words? How did we do?
I want you guys to keep talking. I thought that was really interesting. I loved the talks about like the topography and the desert and how that infused the book, and great questions, everyone. It was great hearing people's comments and questions. I think I'm still absorbing it, everyone, but it was really powerful. I really enjoyed it. And I do think I agree with you, Natty. 2 more hours at least. You know what I mean? This topic deserves much more than an hour, everyone. But yeah, beautiful talk. We will record this, everyone, and we'll let you know, Joaquin and Natty, when it's up on the Gemini YouTube channel. And thank you everyone for joining us tonight. This is quarterly, and our next big Texas Author Talk is in December. So yes, follow our socials. We did link a survey in the chat. It really helps to hear from you. It actually helps us get funding to bring more of these to you. But we also just want to hear from you. We want to know what resonates with you. So but mostly, thank you. I really appreciated this conversation, and it was really great being able to meet both of you tonight.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful. I hope everyone has a lovely night. Natty, I love you.
I love you too.
Y'all be safe. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.